from Newsweek by way of MSN. New York City deals blow to landlords, which is what they've been doing for at least the past decade or since the de Blasio era, in an effort to turn everything into a communist hellscape, or I guess in their eyes, a communist utopia. And there you have Eric Adams with his Fendi scarf, and he is taking it all out on the landlords, while the illegals, who are not even apparently illegal anymore, get the free Uncrustables that they don't even want.
Migrants and asylum seekers are not undocumented. They were legally paroled in the city by the Customs Border Patrol on the southern part of our border.
Some New York City landlords will be affected by the city's rent stabilization law for another 3 years after Mayor Eric Adams extended the measure until 2027. The legislation sets the rate landlords are permitted to increase rents by, and has been in effect ever since it was originally enacted in 1969. So that's another thing they try to do is claim, well, the sanctuary city laws have been around since the 80s. This isn't new, even though it's all new. It's never gotten this bad. And even if there was a right to shelter law, it certainly shouldn't apply to anybody from all around the world. But it continues. Extended once again through April 2027, tenants' rights advocates are celebrated, while landlords have expressed disappointment by the decision, saying that it cuts into their profits and reinvestment efforts. And as we all know by now, it is a race to the bottom. It is corruption versus corruption. The weirdo lefties and the mayor, who is part of the weirdo lefty contingent for the most part, they absolutely hate landlords, even though a bunch of them are also landlords, but the hypocrisy is the point. We see it on almost everything they do. But now they want to control the prices of everything, which I guess on its surface kind of makes sense, because New York is astronomically more expensive than almost anywhere probably in the world, certainly in the United States. Our rent stabilization laws are critical to the security of working class New Yorkers who live in rent stabilized housing. Adams, a Democrat, said at a bill signing ceremony, according to reporting by Our Town, a local paper for the city's Upper East Side. The law affects over 1 million rent-stabilized properties and roughly 44% of all rental apartments. Since the pandemic, the city has seen an influx of residents move back. Okay, so people left and some people decided to come back. I can't imagine why they would do that, but whatever. While New York saw a vacancy rate of 4.54% in 2021, that figure had moved down to just 1.41%, according to the city's Department of Housing Preservation and Development and the U.S. Census Bureau. And then here you have the Eat the Bugs people. Oh, new report shows it's more affordable to rent than buy a starter home in most U.S. cities. So don't worry, you're going to be renting from BlackRock and eating the bugs soon enough. Since the bill has been extended, New York City is also working to implement new zoning ordinances that will permit commercial buildings to transition into residential units. This new move is courtesy of the City of Yes initiative. And that, again, all sounds well and good, but you're going to start turning office buildings into apartments. That would arguably be more work than just creating new buildings, but they make that impossible too because of all the red tape. Declaring a housing emergency. Every single thing is an emergency. Oh, racism is a health crisis. Rona is an emergency. Every single thing is an emergency because we all know that you just declare something an emergency and you immediately get more power and control to do whatever it is you want. Okay, declaring housing an emergency and extending rent stabilization another 3 years. So they're just going to kick the can down the road. Do you think in 3 years they're going to stop this? Absolutely not. It's a necessary step to protect some of the most vulnerable renters from unaffordable rent increases, but the migrants get to live free. Okay, but it does not get us out of this crisis. Adolfo Carrion Jr., the commissioner of the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, said in a statement. Now, do you really think that you want the government, especially of New York, taking control of everything, right? They already have NYCHA, the public housing, which is completely filthy, roach infested. The sewers don't work. The heaters don't work. Those are the people making decisions for how much a landlord can charge. All right. Today and every day, we are renewing our calls for all levels of government to step up and deliver the tools we need to build housing at the scale this crisis demands. Rent stabilization laws also calls for protections against evictions and ensures tenants have access to several required services and lease renewal. So, yeah, if you don't pay, they're going to make sure that you get the right of way, even though you already do. We've seen that all across the country. The stories of squatters' rights are going viral, and they want to take that even a step further. And that's why it's already, and I've said this before, but it's already so difficult to rent an apartment in New York. Cause you got to come up with 40 times the rent and proof of employment, check stubs, tax returns, all of that stuff, because it is already almost impossible to get rid of somebody, and they want to protect those deadbeats even further, which is absolutely wild. But I don't know. It shouldn't surprise me. Of course, that's what they want to do. The criminal politicians, the criminal regime, of course, is going to breed criminal citizens, as we know. Last year, New York's Rent Guidelines Board said rents could only increase by 2.75% for the first of 2-year leases and 3.2% for the next year. So here we are again, just coming up with arbitrary numbers. And these people, they pretend to be the adults in the room. Oh, we're going to cap this, we're going to cap that. Everything's spiraling out of control, even though it's quite clearly your fault. And to live in New York, which is an absolute bedlam, mayhem, Gotham, it shouldn't cost so much, but it is what it is. And these people don't want to let the market. It's like if the NBA were to stop subsidizing the WNBA, it would all collapse. So these people are just holding up all of their weirdo policies, the creepy communist, leftist city hall. They're all just propping it up, trying to. It's already gone, but it's only a matter of time. We're watching it circle the drain, but it's all gone. And I've said the same thing for San Francisco, in the Bay Area, California in general, arguably. That if they started doing the right thing, cleaning up the crime, literally cleaning up the streets, the rats, the trash bags, if they started doing all of that yesterday, they started prosecuting criminals yesterday, it would still take an entire decade. And even in 10 years, the price that you're paying to live in New York still wouldn't be worth it, as that would have crept up after 10 years of more inflation. But I mean, my point is, the entire thing is a mess. Landlords have come out in opposition to the extended law, with some petitioning the U.S. Supreme Court to analyze its legality. Of course, right? Like, they're always going to... Bo Jiden does the same thing. He completely oversteps the bounds, does things that are illegal. He knows they're illegal, but, having it tied up in the court system buys him a little bit of time. The Supreme Court denied these requests 3 times in a row, but landlord rights groups say the rent hike and eviction protections violate their rights as homeowners. But the New York regime is obviously going to go to bat. I mean, I get it, right? If the regime is going to go to bat for the criminals, and if you bought property in New York 10, 20, 30, however long ago, that made sense. But now they've completely put the kibosh on that. You can't do anything in New York. If you're incredibly wealthy, they're going to come after you. If you have no money at all, you can't afford anything, there's nothing left. It's absolutely dead. And we saw this a little bit different, right? In Oakland, they say downtown Oakland is worse than San Francisco, which is saying a lot, because San Francisco is totally crazy. But even in that report, the media sugarcoats the entire thing and says, oh, well, it's the tech firms. And they don't talk about the crime, the destruction at all, even though we can all see it. But I'm getting triggered here. I digress. But landlords' rights groups say the rent hike and eviction protections violate their rights as homeowners. Okay. The Rent Stabilization Association of New York, another nonsensical bureaucracy that is putting the screws to people, has called on the city to unfreeze rents, and also said the law arbitrarily sets rents. That's literally exactly what I just said. Same thing with Tish James. Oh, well, Donald Trump inflated his property, so he owes me $600 million, billion, trillion dollars. 6 feet social distancing. Nobody knows where it came from. It's all arbitrary. While property taxes remain high, so far the groups haven't garnered much momentum. Our city is facing a housing emergency with a dire shortage of available homes that impact all New Yorkers, City Council Speaker Adrian Adams said. The signing of this legislation into law extends the New York City rent stabilization law of 1969 to ensure rent regulation protections can continue unimpeded within our city. So they are, I mean, it's kind of funny. I don't know exactly. They say this law was put into action in 1969, and ever since then they've just been extending it little by little. We saw the same thing with Andrew Cuomo. Oh, the pause, oh, the emergency, oh, 15 days to slow the spread, until 3 years goes by, and finally enough people have come out and say, we're gonna stop that. But as we know, look, you think about 9/11, even, there's gonna be a little bit of extra security for a year or two, 22 years later, you still got to do all the same stuff, because as soon as one governmental overreach that's just for emergency gets put into place, it's obviously never going to go away. Alan Chang, the founder and president of Vested Title and Escrow, warned the regulation's extension could have a troubling effect if landlords are not able to keep up with the market rate of their rent. Yeah, they destroyed everything, so they want the money's going to just come out of thin air, right? So the landlord can't raise the rent, but, they have to keep up with all these, you got to have certain windows, certain bed. You got to have all these regulations. You got to fix everything. It's got to be perfect, but you can't raise the rent. So I don't know how they're supposed to fix that stuff. And it leads to buildings all across the city being totally empty. But we know this. They know this, right? It's not new. It's all done on purpose, as I've said 100 million times. If landlords are not able to keep up with the market increases in rents, then there will be less money available to reinvest into property for certain types of maintenance and improvements. That's literally what I just said, Chang told Newsweek. With inflation still at high levels, the cost of everything is more expensive, including labor, materials for housing, upkeep. If a complex is not turning a reasonable profit with increased property taxes and maintenance expenses, the owner is likely not going to put more funds into it for updates. Ding, ding, ding. It's very similar to, minimum wage is going up in California. And then they run a whole bunch of stories. Can you believe that a Big Mac costs $25? Yeah, obviously you should go to Panera, because they don't have to pay their workers $20 an hour, and I can't imagine why anybody would work there when all the other restaurants are going to pay $20 an hour, and then you're just going to have a robot serving you food. But I digress. Inflation stood at 3.2% in February, and landlords might feel stretched thin enough that they stop providing high-quality service to tenants. Austin Hare, a managing partner at real estate investment marketplace Lenders Token, added. Yeah, it seems so painfully obvious. That's why I'm having a hard time, understanding that the political regime, they're not doing. Could those people really be that stupid that they don't know what's happening? No, they have to know, which makes it that much more sinister. But I guess there are a bunch of people, brainwashed weirdo sheep, who think this is a good idea. This is, and the more I think about it, the more this is exactly like, California raising the fast food minimum wage. It's clearly part of the destruction, and a bunch of morons that you have convinced this is a good idea is enough to keep up this charade, but it doesn't have a good ending. The end result is that living conditions continue to get worse and worse for the tenants, and in some cases, landlords will not be able to keep up with improvements as inflation increases their cost of doing business. And what we also know is that the migrants who are living free and getting Uncrustables to throw in the trash, they don't have to worry about any of it. While landlords initially took their rental properties as investments, rules under the rent stabilization law could prevent them from drawing a profit. That's the point. They're going to tell you what everything is worth. Tish James says, no, it's not worth that. You owe me. It's all absolutely arbitrary. Lawmakers advocating for rent control may overlook or underestimate these financial burdens, said realtor Pila Jesse told Newsweek. Landlords feel underrepresented and unheard. That's putting it nicely, because they're literally being demonized as the worst people on the planet for owning a property in New York, because that belongs to the government. And that's why they love the migrants so much, is because they can control, they can put, curfews, and then with the the American equivalent, the NYCHA buildings, the city-run housing, those have been completely ignored, right? I mean, you see some disgusting stories about water leakages and backups and rodents in the corridor, all sorts of disgusting stuff. Landlords feel underrepresented and unheard. It is not solely about maximizing profits. Rental properties are also known as income properties, so they should, by design, generate an income. For many landlords, maintaining their properties becomes a financial strain rather than a source of returns. Cody Horvat, a real estate broker for the Scott Group, called the law a small band-aid to the larger housing shortage and unrealistic cost of living in New York. The median income for Manhattan is just $52,409, which means a monthly income of $3,367 before taxes, with an average one-bedroom apartment costing $4,192, according to Zumper. Now, I guess maybe that went down because, as I understood it, the average one-bedroom in Manhattan was $5,600, which is absolutely crazy. When I started working in real estate in New York, I think the average was, it sounds crazy to say only, but at that point was like 35 or 3,600, and then it became 5,600, and now these people are saying it's nearly 500. So I don't know. Take it all with a grain of salt. The point is, it costs way too much to live in a cesspool with criminal migrants getting to live for free and quite literally eating your lunch. Many New Yorkers find it difficult to find affordable housing within city limits. Yeah, quite obviously, that's why you're hemorrhaging residents, but you don't care. They're going to do it on purpose. And if you wanted to be nice about the whole thing, you'd say, okay, well, they're doing this so that people flee, and then the regime can come in and buy it up as part of their communist takeover and then gentrify it from the ground up. That would be the best possible scenario.